tell us about what neurofeedback is and why it's unique and different from, say, a talk therapy or a talk support.
Well, that's just it. You're talking about trauma, so that in itself can be re-traumatizing to a person that has experienced trauma or PTSD. That can re-trigger their trauma points and events because they're reliving it, and they don't know, the body doesn't know, the brain doesn't know that they're safe, and so they can put themselves right back in those situations seemingly. So with neurofeedback, and I did my basically final thesis master's capstone project, final project on all these trauma recovery strategies. So I do have a great understanding of different ones, but what my premise was is that nonverbal, passive type, somatic experiencing types of treatments, therapies are super helpful for people, especially that have experienced trauma because of the trapped stored emotions in the body. And so what neurofeedback is doing is that it's just tapping into the innate ability for the brain to self-regulate. It can self-optimize, it can self-regulate, it can self correct itself, just because it's such a powerful, complex organ, almost like a supercomputer. So it's tapping into this very powerful concept called like the oriented reflex. And the orienting reflex keeps us alive. It's what teaches us how to, like, walk. So toddlers, we don't teach them how to walk. They just learn innately. They fall down, the brain learns what it needs to self-adjust, and it learns from that, self-corrects, and we just learn how to find our own center of gravity, our own special gait. And so what the brain is always trying to do is move from discomfort to comfort, to more of a equilibrium. And just like us sitting here, we might shift in our seat, we might put on a sweater if we're cold or take it off just because the body is always trying to self-regulate, and we do that at almost like a subconscious level. And so neurofeedback is just taking those points, those stuck points, that maybe those pathways, those thought patterns, the negative thinking, those things that aren't serving us well, and trying to move the brain to a more calm, regulated, flexible resilience state. Just because, again, there's always change in life. Life changes all the time. And so when we're not able to be flexible and stay flexible, not be able to handle those moments, we get stuck and rigid. That's really hard for us to handle. We get stuck.
Okay, so I have so many questions for you. Number one, I always try to break it down into the simplest terms because you and I can talk at this very high level because there's a lot of things we understand and infer and know that we're building this conversation on. But my listeners don't necessarily have that level of understanding. So I want to talk about top down and bottom up type of approaches to dealing with trauma so people understand what we're talking about. At one point, you were talking about, there's parts of the brain that don't have that language. It's just more instinctive, right? Like walking.
Hmm.
And we
Yeah.
were talking about safety. Let's talk a little bit about the amygdala and the power of the amygdala and the importance of the amygdala here, specifically in the sense that it is a part of the brain that does not use language. It's a part of the brain that uses instinct. And if we know that trauma is not the event, an event can be traumatic, but the trauma is the aftermath and it's stored in the body. And it's usually not stored in language. It's usually stored in this lack of safety. Can you talk about the amygdala, where it plays in, and why talk therapy doesn't always get to that because of where the amygdala is located in the brain versus that
Right.
prefrontal cortex? I think it's
Right.
important to distinguish that
Mhm.
before we go deep into how neurofeedback works.
Right. So our prefrontal cortex is our executive thinking. It helps us make choices, decision making. The amygdala is more of the survival, fight, flight, freeze. Now we know there's fawn, there's flock, there's, just so many other little things that the brain can go into. And it's a form of protection. And so when we're not feeling safe or protected, it's instinctual. The amygdala will just help us survive, and it's emotional, like, we just react, and that's actually what keeps us safe and helps us survive.
I try to get people to understand this all the time, that safety, when we think of safety, we think, oh, I'm in danger, right? And there's going to be abuse, aggression, violence, war, accidents, what have you. But safety can be so much bigger than that. It doesn't have to be
Mhm.
what happened. Safety can be what didn't happen, what was supposed to happen.
Right,
So if
right,
our physiological needs or our needs for safety and security or our needs for love and belonging are not met well enough, it leads us to make the decision about ourselves before we're 9 years old that there's something wrong with me. Insert,
right.
I'm not enough. And
Mhm.
because we're so hardwired for connection as humans, that feels like a lack of safety. Because if I'm not enough, you're not going to want to be connected to me. And I require connection as a human. Would you say that that's accurate?
Right. Connection and biological It's a biological imperative for safety and connection, and yes, you definitely if you're not feeling safe and connected, you won't be open to, uh, learning and, connection with other people relationally, so
That's the
yeah.
relational trauma. I want people to understand
Right.
that. So, can you describe that? Because, again, you and I know what relational trauma is, but a lot of people do not.
Just I mean, as an adoptee growing up, I always felt like something was missing, there's something wrong with me, like, there's a missing piece of this, and I grew up in a, quote, "loving, safe family," but it's again the felt safety. I might be physically saved, I might have all the, physical, things that I need, food, shelter, water, clothes, whatever it is, but because I came into this world knowing that the world isn't a safe place because of the interruption of that connection with my biological mom. I didn't feel safe, and I couldn't once again, it goes back to implicit memories. I couldn't explain it, I couldn't, like, verbalize it, but that put my nervous system in chronic fight or flight, chronic stress, so I grew up having a fragile nervous system, and it came out in my life as a, like, overachievement, a people pleaser, not wanting to disrupt the apple cart. I was very attuned to people's nonverbals, and that's just again, our nervous systems are always scanning the environment, trying to see if we are safe, and I never felt safe, so I was always on high alert, hyper vigilant, you might say, and that's what a fragile nervous system, appears as. It could be a lot of things, but that's how it appeared in my life.
Yeah. And when you were talking about having a flexible and fluid nervous system, right, which we need for resilience and coping, we end up with more of a fixed, rigid,
Mhm.
controlled nervous system, which then kind of I love polyvagal theory. So it kind of
Yeah,
narrows that window of tolerance. And
yes.
now we have more access to this either hyper vigilant or like hypo arousal state. So now having laid that framework, I'd love for you to create a visual for the listener about what neurofeedback is. You've described how it works, but I would love for you to create a visual and describe with picture
Mhm.
exactly what someone is going through when they're going through neurofeedback. How is it administered?
Okay, so practically, it's done through the software technology that we have on, like, a laptop. The technology is so advanced that it's built into the software, and so, basically, you just get hooked up with sensors on your scalp to up here and then on your ears for, just the grounding and then just to make sure that we're not picking up extra electrical activity to know what's benign and what's, useful. So, the brain, um is getting fed the information, hence the term neurofeedback. The cortical activity is getting fed into this system and this software, and then it's like holding up a mirror. And if the brain is looking at that information, do I need to do something about it? And if so, what is it? And it learns from itself. It's like if you were to look in a mirror and you just start fixing your hair, brushing a crumb off your face, you do it subconsciously. It just knows to intuitively correct on what it needs to do. It's almost like defragging your hard drive, if you remember back in the you just start organizing. It takes all the information and starts to optimize it and order it and put it into place where it needs to go. And so it's just learning from itself, like, hey, this is not serving me well. I need to learn from it. And what it's doing is it's detecting almost like the turbulence of like, okay, the brain's gonna be turbulent. We need to fix this. And like this information isn't doing well. What do I need to do with it? I need to learn from this and bring your brain back to the present where that's where we experience the regulation and the calm, and we're not hyper fixated in the past or the future.
Mhm.